Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman.
And I am your boy, Jelani Kelly.
And today we're talking about Jelani's book, Descended Awakening. So the book isn't out just yet, but by the time you guys hear this, it will be. And we're going to talk about it. And we are going to go into spoilers. So you can listen to this if you haven't read it, but just, fair warning, we are going to spoil probably everything, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So, first of all, great job on finishing it and getting it published, because, that's really cool. So,
Thanks. Appreciate it.
yeah, do you have anything you want to say about it from the outset, or, this is your first published work, right?
Yes, it is. I've written scripts before, but it's not like other people would be willing to buy a script and read it like they would on a novel. I'm sure there are people that would buy a script and read it, but I'm sure I'm getting much more support because it's in a novel format.
Yeah, but, so in any case, it's your first published thing, so it's an accomplishment at some level.
Yeah.
The first question I have is, was there a thing that kind of hooked you into the story and kept you coming back to it every day? Because motivating yourself to write a whole novel can be pretty tough to do. So, was there anything that made you feel like, I have to write this?
I guess working. So, I probably shouldn't say this, but I spent most of my time writing the first few books during my co-op in college. They had me editing, and I would be sitting there listening to the videos to see if anything needed to be cut out, but while listening, I would also be writing at the same time. So through that, I got most of my books done. I'd say over half of my books done in that 6-month period.
How many books is half of your books?
Currently, I have 7 done. I'm working on the 8th in the series.
So, 3 or 4 you did in that time?
Yeah, I'd say around there. Yeah, I'm also trying to get into some of my other series. But now what's keeping me going is wanting to be able to write these books full time. I enjoy writing the books, and I don't like working for other people, so working for myself would be really cool. And I also stream every night, and writing on the stream keeps me writing as well. I realized after I stopped streaming for a bit that I wasn't writing at all. And then once I hop back on the stream, and my entire stream is just dedicated to me sitting there writing. And once I got back on the stream, I just felt motivated to just continue. So knowing others are also looking forward to seeing me stream and write is what also helps me keep going with just writing in general.
Yeah, because I can see how that would be, because you kind of feel like you're almost letting them down by not writing that day a little
Exactly.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like a good way to get yourself motivated to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is, like we said, this is your first published work. Was there anything about this that made you decide to publish this story rather than anything else that you'd written previously?
I guess the fact that I thought it was a complete project. A lot of the projects I started that weren't required for a class in college weren't finished. So the fact that I finished this during my co-op and then continued to finish others during my co-op, I was like, maybe I have something here. And also, my roommate, I think it was junior year, gave me the idea to just write my books out. I was focusing on making this a comic at some point, and I was looking for an artist, but I really didn't want to do the work required to find a good artist, a loyal artist, a good, fairly priced artist. So my roommate just told me, why don't you just write the books out yourself and figure it out later. And I did that. Probably the next day I sat down and just started writing these stories out. Like I said, with the co-op being as laid back as it was, I just continued to write from there.
So it was partly a time thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that writing a comic book would be a lot more work, I would think, because you gotta do everything that you did for the book plus illustrate all of it, basically.
And I wasn't willing to do the art myself. I like to think I can draw a little bit, average, but Yeah, I had tried before when I was younger to, well, I had make like little comics and like notebooks and stuff. But then I tried doing it seriously, and I did not enjoy it. Like, first of all, I don't even like doing digital anything, but I feel like in today's day and age, you kind of have to know a little bit on the digital side in order to polish your work up. And before I even had the technology to do that, I was just trying to draw. Just drawing the lines for a comic book page was very annoying because I was trying to get them as perfect as possible. And I didn't even know about storyboarding or any of that, so I was just making boxes, and it was not fun.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm not super into comic books, but from the few that I've read, it seems like page design is like a whole process in itself. Like that's almost half of the storytelling right there.
Yep.
Is like how big do you make each box and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite part of the book to come up with or to write?
Strangely enough, the last chapter, uh, the building of an alien world, was something unlike anything I've written before. Of course, the main book was fun to write, but as of now, like, the reader is still getting to know those characters. But establishing a completely different, like, story within this story was just something really different. And it was just, like, the world building was fun to do. Like, I was crafting, like, this is what I partially liked writing for. Like, you can create literally anything with words, and crafting an alien world from scratch was something really dope. I enjoyed about the first book, and it originally wasn't in this first book until I went back and said, maybe I should build up to these characters. That'll be a later arc in the series. The last chapter with those alien characters is gonna build up to like the 8th book in the series, and you'll see what they're all about instead of it just being clips at the end of each book up until that point.
Okay, so the last chapter, you mean the one with the dragons?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even in the rest of the book, I mean, there's certainly no shortage of world building in that. Like,
Yeah.
There was a lot that went into that, I would think.
Yeah.
Just from all the different types and like the Archangel origin stories and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
What was an element or a section of the book that gave you the most trouble?
Any of the origins, really. I wanted to extend the book while giving backstory for some of the main characters, and I was gonna make an origin book at some point, but I just took the chapters from that book, each of the chapters from that book was a separate origin, and I added them in between scenes in this book to give more backstory and give the reader a sense like they might know this character a little more after reading the origin. And I only did that for the main characters of this book because there were a lot of characters, so I wasn't going to do it for everybody. And it was also troubling to make sure the timeline with the past and present made sense. And in order to work through that, but yeah, I'd say connecting the origins with the present and making sure everything lined up. Like, and also the little clips at the end of each origin as well. Like, I like adding clips to what's coming in the future. So there was those things with, they kept seeing or hearing an explosion in the distance, and they would run to that, but before you saw what was happening, the origin of their origin would end until we got to the last origin, which was vital. And making sure the timeline as far as who started first in the arc group lined up properly. So I'd say that was the biggest challenge. Like, I'm not great with time anything, and there's probably a different way I could have gone about this without needing to stress myself out the way I did. But yeah, definitely the origins.
You definitely like gave yourself a challenge with putting this many characters and giving us backstory for all of them. So, and I think I was telling you this beforehand, but I'll say it again. Like, I think that was one of the best things about it is the way that it is paced, so that you have, like, we have these characters that are all doing things, and then you give us a reason to care, which helps us remember who they are and be invested. So, one, it's easier to remember. Two, it gives us kind of a stake in the story. And it just makes them all distinct, which is, like, great that you can do that with I mean, how many characters are in this? Like 30 hero
Oh,
characters, something like that.
I
Maybe that's a little more, but it's
probably.
not much less than that, I would think, right?
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's a lot. Plus, I add so many characters because I don't ever want it to feel like it's dying at any point in the story. So I guess that's why I also added the origins and all of that. Not only, like you said, to give attachment to the readers as to who these people are, because as opposed to like a Superman, Batman, or Spider-Man type hero, like the reader doesn't know who these people are. So I need to, I guess, kind of throw it in their face like, yo, these people are important. Get attached to them.
And you've
And
also got like pretty. I don't feel like there's any two heroes in this book that have like super similar powers. Like it's a good mix of powers here, like which I think is not
yeah,
necessarily
not
true
yet.
of some of like other. I don't know, like the MCU. I feel like you could interchange probably about five characters that basically can do the same thing, which is not really the case for yours.
Yep. At least not yet in the story. There might get to a point where some people have similar powers. Like there's gonna be a few fire people down the line, maybe a few ice or lightning people, because I like element based characters. I also didn't want any of the characters' villains to be like the type to where they had the same powers and either one could topple the other. I don't think you ever see that in the series.
Yeah, well, you also kind of got a thing going where it's like you almost have no shortage of how many powered characters you can have because now, like, basically becoming a superhuman is available to just about anyone who wants it.
Exactly.
So, like, theoretically, we could just kind of have an infinite number of them at this point. Was there anything significant that changed from the early stages to the final story? Or I'll group this in with it too. Was there anything that like that stayed the same from like when you first started coming up with it that is still in the final version?
Since I was already far into the series by the time, like, I just recently, like, I think probably end of November or somewhere in December, recently came back to this book after writing forward in the series for like a year. I knew I didn't want much of the core book to change by the completed version of it. I did add the origins in and that final question mark chapter, but I would say those are definitely the biggest changes. I did add a few fight scenes, like the bank heist wasn't there, the subway scene with Ake wasn't there, but that was just to give, I guess more character moments and spend more time with the main character. Because yeah, you said there are a lot of main characters. Lux, of course, is the main character, but I feel like we might have gotten, and that was a mention in somebody else that read the story, we kind of got away from him a little bit. So I wanted to add a few more scenes with him collaborating with the other heroes.
Okay. So I guess that's a decent segue into the next question. Do you have a favorite of these characters or favorites?
Most of my powerful villains are my favorites. I don't. Oh yeah, I do have a specific favorite. Cryo Man. He is not a part of this series. He's a part of the second series I'll be getting into, Dark Before Dawn. He's like a Spider-Man, Batman-esque type, as far as like suit abilities, and well, Spider-Man sometimes doesn't have the greatest suit abilities. Sometimes it'll just be spandex, but sometimes he has like an advanced suit. Cryoman, because not only is his character great, but I've started to create a rogues gallery of villains that are based off of mythological creatures. I'm really excited to get into that story once I can write more. Part-time kind of keeps me from that. But Cryo Man is my absolute favorite currently. And then some of my other favorite characters, like my top 5 is Cryo Man, and then there are other characters that might not have been introduced yet from this series, including Detrius. Well, he was introduced at the end. Malos, who you definitely have not heard of yet. Antithesis, and of course Lux.
So from the characters we see in this book, Lux is your favorite of those?
Like in the main series of this book?
Well, in the of the characters we meet in Awakening.
I'd say Detrius is above Lux,
Okay.
shockingly enough.
So how did you go about crafting your characters, and like what was a starting point or a typical starting point with each of them? Because like we said, you've got a whole lot of characters in this book, so and like you said, it was one of the bigger challenges was like dealing with that quantity. So where did you kind of start with each one?
So the way I craft characters can come from a few things. It can be a creative name I come up with that has not been taken by another copyrighted character. A creative superpower. You probably see a lot of creative different superpowers in this series. Yeah, or a creative origin. I'm sure there's other ways I use, but I can't think of them right now. Yeah, I sometimes forget. Like, I definitely forgot how I came up with, like, the main 7 characters, which is really weird, because I don't even know how long. No, sophomore year, so, like, 4 years ago, I came up with the main 7 arcs, but I don't know, like, where the original idea for them came from.
So was there anyone who you do remember like a specific inspiration for? Like there was like a certain seed that you do remember like where it started for anyone, even if it was like a minor character.
I guess all of them start from somewhere. For example, Seismic is based off my father, so that's a huge thing. But all of them come from somewhere, whether it's real life or an homage to a different fictional series, because I have a few of those. Like, I guess shout out characters to series I really enjoy. They'll come from anywhere. Like, I have some characters in the works whose origins I got from weird dreams I had. I was like, that might make an interesting origin if I, don't make it as weird as it was in my dream. Also, all the characters have like a piece of me as a part of them, which I guess would be a given. Whether that be like a personality trait, a part of their origin, motivations, or like a weird quirk they have. So I'm kind of, like you asked who was my favorite, I'm kind of attached to all of them, to be honest, because they're all slivers of me. Like, yeah, sometimes inspiration will be from another fictional character or people I know in real life.
I wouldn't expect it would be easy to pick a favorite. I mean, obviously, like, there's a little bit more attention on some than others, but, like, that doesn't necessarily always mean that they're, like, favored or whatever.
Right. Wait, who was your favorite?
I think the one that I remember when I read, I'm pretty sure it was Chris. His hero name's Vital, I think, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember liking his origin story a lot. Yeah, and I also, for some reason, I think it was Josh / Ice Cap. I think he was probably one of my favorites too. Like, yeah, and he was introduced earlier too, so like I felt like I got a little bit more time with him. Plus, like, I don't know, it just seems kind of cool that like I don't know exactly what to call him, but he looks like a tiger or whatever. I don't know if there's
humanoid
like a name
tiger.
for that,
Yeah,
but
those are the two I'm speculating will be the most favored. I don't know why exactly. Maybe Ice Cap's attitude and Vital is, I guess, relatability. Yeah, I'm speculating Ice Cap will definitely be one of the top favorites in this series from whoever tells me who their favorite is. I think my brother definitely favors him one of the most. He was actually a character I made back in 6th grade.
Ice Cap.
Yeah. And I found a way to incorporate him in this story. Originally, this story was nowhere near as, I guess, competent as the story I was making in 6th grade. It was just supposed to be like a group of special people and an alien came down to guide and lead them and whatever. And I'm like, maybe there's a way I can bring some of these characters to the current series, and I just made him a part of the main group. There's a few others, like Samurai, for example. He was also another one of the OG characters I made back in 6th grade. Yeah, I'll mention them to you later down the line, but there are some others that are spread throughout the series that might not have as a prominent role as, of course, Ice Cap.
Yeah. Although, like, without getting into spoiler territory, like, all of these characters are probably coming back later in the series, right?
The main ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't like the last we've seen of any of them, I would think.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, 100% not. No, no. I try to keep everybody and every character once they're introduced as involved as possible, which is why I gotta be careful of where I introduce them.
Do you feel like there's anything that writing this story or this series has taught you, either as a writer or as a person? I mean, you spent, what, like at least a year writing all of this, and it sounds like even longer than that coming up with it. So I would think there's like a lot of like things you've learned as a storyteller through that, probably.
I guess right for the right reason.
Okay.
I was originally doing it for money and sales, but I really just want to be able to write and share my ideas. Like, somebody comes to me and just tells me who their favorite character is, that'd be really a really good feeling, probably. But yeah, just writing for the right reason. My dad helped me like refocus what my intentions were with writing this series. And
Or anything we can expect, again, without spoilers, but like anything we might see in the future from the series.
don't get it too attached to anyone. I know you said your favorite characters are, and I'm not going to say anything about them. But when the third book releases, you're going to see a lot of deaths, and it will be a huge tonal shift for the story from that point on, because by the third book, and this is not really a spoiler because the title is Descended Destruction, that's when the third invasion hits. Like, when Dom, Terrace, and Xerax came to the planet, that was kind of like a second invasion. The first invasion, of course, was the first thing you see in the book. Then them coming to fight the Arcs was the second. Then when we get to the third, there's going to be a lot of people dying. Some people you might not want to see die. I'm not gonna specify who, and I don't. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything on who does, but it's gonna be a really big tonal shift for the story, because that was one of my driving points for writing this story, and I completely forgot to mention it. I wanted to have a series where the main characters were not as protected as they are in other series. Like, for example, in comic books like Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man, at this point, DC and Marvel can never kill them off permanently. Like, 100%, they can never kill them off permanently because they make too much money for the companies in the real world. But because my characters have, and I always say this, because my characters have not had years and years of people to grow attached to them, I can use that to my advantage and kill off whoever I want. And it makes me sound sadistic.
Well, hey, I mean, it's worked out pretty well for George R.R. Martin. He has certainly not lost fans for doing that. So,
Yep, that was part of the intention.
and you even gave us kind of a fake out death there with Ash in the final scene. Like, I thought, oh, maybe like
Yep.
there is gonna be, and then of course he comes back, which if I'd been conscious of it, I probably should have seen coming. But like,
Yep.
it still did give kind of a shock. I was like, oh wait, he's dying like that soon. But even like when I did read that section when the aliens go away, I was like, it was a little too easy. Like, this can't be the last of it.
Yeah.
Like it, and I was wondering if maybe they were going to come back even again in this book, which doesn't happen. But it was still like, I think the term is like a Pyrrhic victory. I might have pronounced that wrong, but where it's like they won, but maybe not really.
Yeah. And I wanted that to, that's exactly how I wanted that to happen. I wanted that to mess with the reader's mind a little bit. Like, okay, maybe he might be dead. But if you remember from the origin, he actually came back to life from, I just dying of old age, and then his mother, but Mother Nature brought him back as a human. So that was a little hint as to what might happen if he was killed here. Yeah, that was to just show you that, I guess, ease the reader a little bit and saying, okay, maybe these main characters are protected because, he can come back. So
Yeah.
maybe that somebody else can come back. Maybe a different, of course, they're not phoenixes, but maybe in a different way. And there was also the fake out with, I wanted to play with the trope that the hero's parents always die. when Lux comes home, he walks the street a lot, and I realized that reading the book back so many times. I always write that sentence, Lux walks the street. When he was walking home and he saw the police cars out front of his mother's place, and like he didn't see his mother, and he was just like, oh crap, did she die? And then she was just fine. And I think that was the scene with Miss Crawford's death, or maybe it was a break-in. No, that was the scene where Miss Crawford called the police on, I think it was Saber and Isaiah going to their place. But I wanted to play with that a little. And yeah, like I said, I just wanted to ease the reader a little bit into thinking, okay, maybe these characters are protected, and that is not the case.
Yeah, just something I'm thinking of in regard to Lux that I think kind of made this story a little more refreshing was like, you have kind of an ensemble piece here, but I mean, he's clearly like, he's the first one we meet, so he's kind of the main character in that sense. But I kind of liked that he is just kind of one of them. Like, a lot of times I feel like a character like him would be like a chosen one sort of thing, or there would be something special or like mysterious about him in like the Harry Potter kind of sense, where it's like clearly he's not a normal, even if like all of these characters are supernatural, somehow he's even strange among them. And like he does kind of have a sort of unique identity, I feel like, with them, because he chose to get his powers and everything, and was apparently, it sounds like, kind of one of the first people to do that. But I did kind of like that no one was telling him like, you're, I don't know, destined from birth to do whatever. Like, it was kind of nice to have him just be one of the group, but still have like that extra attention and a little more development.
There was a hint to something when he's mind controlled and fighting Ardentia. Like, of course his energy is developing, his energy abilities are developing the more he uses them. But there was a hint, I'm not gonna go into detail, but there was like, his energy changed to black when he was fighting Ardentia as he was mind controlled. Like, there was just a flash of it. I'm not gonna say more about that. I'm just throwing that out there. He's definitely not a chosen one. Like, there was never supposed to be a prophecy, and there still isn't, I believe, in the story. So he, technically speaking, is one of them. The arcs were 100% chosen. Oh, what is this? What? Yo!
What?
Stop the podcast. I just found my AirPods. They were in my couch. I thought I dropped them somewhere. These $200 things, I thought I dropped them somewhere near my brother's college, and we looked around for it, and I thought, well, somebody's out there enjoying my AirPods, and I just found them in my freaking couch. What?
Well,
I bought new ones.
I guess that's good.
Evan, I have 4 AirPods now. What am I gonna do with 4 of these?
Well, I guess you get a spare.
Oh my god.
Do we want to keep that in?
Yeah, keep that in. Bro. Okay, back to the... I'm gonna have to, like, just sit down and let that come to me later. I'm not completely processing that right now. But yeah, the arcs were 100% chosen, and they're like supposedly the chosen ones, and Apothale is there telling them from birth, like, yeah, you guys are chosen, and yeah, I'm just gonna introduce you to others. There are others like you, and you guys get a super special base and all of that. But you know, it's not entirely about them. Let's just say. Because Lux, of course, is the main character. Lux is not a chosen one, but no, that's all I can say. That's all I can say.
Okay, yeah. One follow-up question I want to add on, though. There's a few archetype kind of things. Like, we talked about, like, Ash is a phoenix, and then you have, like, archangels, and then at the end there's dragons, and, like, I don't have a lot of experience personally with writing for archetypes, but I took this class on supernatural dramas last year, and we kind of talked about how like when you have a certain type of character, you have to hit like for a character to be considered like a vampire kind of, they have to like meet 3 or 4 requirements. But then outside of that, you can kind of play around and like
Mm-hmm.
you have like you just this is a story that does deal in archetypes somewhat. So like, was there
Yeah.
anything you felt like notable about how you dealt with those?
Different takes. There are 100%, I believe, different takes on what these archetypes are. Like, sit down and think for a second when you hear this question. Have you ever, in your life, ever heard of an alien dragon god?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't.
I mean, I've heard of each of those 3 things separately,
Yep,
and
not
maybe 2 of them
combined.
together, but not all 3.
Yep. Yup. And there's a certain character in. Oh, actually, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I'm gonna spoil it because it might or should have been evident in this book. Krygon, and I don't know if you remember Krygon in the final chapter.
He was the youngest dragon, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember if I got into detail about what he looks like. Did I?
I think so, but I don't know off
Yes.
the top of my head. I just
One
remember he was the
eye.
youngest one.
Yeah, he has one eye. There's only one other character in the series that has one eye right now.
Okay, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Do you want me to say it, or do we not want to?
Yes.
It's Archaeos, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The one the arcs are fighting when you first see all seven of them together. The one that's in prison waiting for them to come down with the second invasion. He is one of them. He is the youngest of that family. So you got to think, what's he doing on Earth? Why is he working under domination? And don't worry about the silliness of that name. It will never make sense. I was gonna say it'll make sense down the line. No, it's never gonna make sense.
Well, I mean, we're getting into the boys on the next episode, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Homeland.
this has nothing on that in terms of ridiculous names. Some of the
Yes.
names in that show are just. I'll save that for that episode.
So yes, Krygon in the final chapter, the youngest alien dragon god, is Archaeos. So what's going on there? We'll figure it out later in this. I think later in this series. I don't think it's in the second book. Oh, that's what I had to say. The second book, more heroes. The first like half of the book is just chapters introducing. You remember the heroes that showed up at the end of the book to take the
Yeah,
arcs
from
to Asai?
the Alpha Core.
Yeah, and they were also there to stop Dom's invasion. Like Asai just showed up with the floodlights, and there were just silhouettes of heroes there. Yeah, each chapter is gonna be introducing either one or 2 of them, or like maybe a small group of them. In the second book. So in the second book, Descended Anticipation, and we're going to be. The entire point of that book is to build up to the first big arc of the series, which is why it's called Anticipation. It's just building and building. So we're getting, like I was saying, each chapter in the first, I'd say the first half of the book, is just getting Lux. It's really Lux going on journeys with these new heroes that they have no idea about. So it's introducing more characters to be killed in the third book. So I'm expanding the world of the heroes and villains, and like I said, building up to the third book.
Yeah, and one thing I should mention too, because I didn't take advantage of this when reading it, but I think this is going to be in the final book. Correct me if it's not, but you have like a sort of a glossary. That's not really
Yes.
the right word, but like you have a profile for each character in like the
Yes.
last 30 or so pages of the book, which I did not take advantage of while reading it for fear of last paging. That is something that I think would be useful for
Yes.
people when reading it. And I think it definitely helped because I went through after I finished and went through all of those, and it helped me remember like, okay, yeah, it called me back to a couple of their backstories that I'd forgotten parts of.
Yeah, I was gonna mention. Just gonna mention at the very end. There's pictures of some of the characters along with biographic information, like the superpowers, personality, height, weight, all of that stuff, their
Yeah,
age,
and aliases too,
aliases, yeah,
in case
who they
people
really
are like confused on names.
Yes, exactly. That's the point in the glossary at the end. Yes, that was built to help readers visualize who these characters are. Because I had drawings and I had no idea what to do with the drawings, so I just threw them in the back of the book. It's to help the reader visualize who these characters are and, like you said, keep up with who is who when they're referring to their real names. Because they only normally refer to their real names when they're alone, like in their base or something like that. Because why would you refer to your friend as their superhero name when you're chilling with them?
Yeah, but the origin stories mostly deal in their
That too,
like given names, not their hero names. So
because they're not the heroes at that point. So
yeah, I think that helped too. Was like because sometimes in like the present day, the characters will refer to each other with their like regular names, and but we've also already spent or will end up spending like 5 or 10 pages with each of them as like
Yeah.
their pre-hero selves. I didn't look at any of the profiles, but I felt like I was able to keep track of them pretty well, considering how many of them there were. Like, I would say if there were 20 characters, I had a pretty good handle on 15 of them without consulting that. And again, I think that's a result of the backstories and being able to like be invested in them. So, all things considered, like I would still recommend using the glossary, but like there's stuff in the text that will like I think you'll be able to keep track. Just meaning readers will be able to keep track of it even if you don't use the profiles.
Shout out to my artist Nick for doing the cover, and you didn't see it because it's still like one of the earlier versions. There's gonna be art, and he's working on it as we speak. There's gonna be art spread throughout the book. I think I have 8 pieces coming. Like, you know how certain series, like series of unfortunate events or something, will have like one or two pieces of art inside the book.
Yeah, it's not like fully illustrated, but they'll have
It'll be black and white, and there'll be a few things like that. Like one of them is going to be like a picture of the arc base and just important scenes, maybe some standoffs or like fight scene. They're not exactly book accurate, but I also didn't want to stress them out because we are in a time crunch right now. It is due tomorrow. I have to upload the manuscript tomorrow.
Yeah. Also, you're like the fight scenes are pretty involved. Like,
Yeah.
you definitely err more on the X-Men side than like the MCU side, where it's like
Just
it's
karate.
not them just punching each other. It's like they're all really taking advantage of their different powers. So it's like
Thank you.
there's a lot. Yeah. Well, that was something that was just like I think I've mentioned this before. Like I enjoy watching an X-Men fight scene way more than an MCU one, just because like just some of the Marvel fight scenes I feel like they just degenerate into like people punching each other. And like when you're reading the fight scenes in your book and watching like an X-Men fight scene, it's more like a matching game where it's like one person cancels the other out. And it's like
Yeah.
their
That's what I
actual powers instead of just like I don't know, guns basically.
Yeah. That's what I wanted from that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions, so well, if you want to like add anything else you can, but I have a couple boilerplate like announcements just before we end.
Buy the book. Buy the book. I promise. If you don't, and even if you don't, and I probably shouldn't say this inviting negativity, but even if you don't enjoy this book, I promise you there's going to be not only more to this series, but other series as well that you might vibe with a little more. I don't like human characters. Like, I don't like Batman. I'm going on a record as saying I do not like Batman just as a character, fictional character, whatever. I tend to make my main characters have some sort of supernatural edge to them. So if you don't like this series and how balls to the wall insane it is, there are others. Like, I'd say Dark Before Dawn is much more character driven, less action driven. There's more to come. Let's just say that there's more to come. Stick with your boy. And thanks. This was a pleasure to do, Evan. Thanks for this.
Yeah. And again, like it's not out at the moment we're recording this, but by the time you guys hear this, it will be available to buy
Yes.
either on Kindle or in